a pretty dark moment in Valorant's history. The most broken agent for the longest period of time. This is actually a huge change to Valorant. Too overpowered. Riot didn't slow down when it came to 2020. There are a couple things to suggest that Valorant did begin development in 2013 or 2014, which is kind of insane because that would be nearly 10 to 11 years ago. And to be honest, when you look at footage like this, it's not that crazy to think. This footage itself could be 2014, 2015, 2016. We can't pinpoint accurately, but no matter what, whatever footage we're watching, there has to be an earlier scope. There has to be initial planning, ideas, pitching, and even more. With that being said, this footage alone is insane and extremely interesting. We can see here clearly they are playing on Haven, and the map, if we zoom into the minimap, does look overall quite familiar. Furthermore, there's other observations. For example, at the bottom, abilities and the way they were structured. And of course, you can see that this is an early Reyna development playtest as they have labeled down below. And it looks like KO was going to be the original Reyna, which is kind of wild to think about. And if we go to the agent select screen, you're going to even see special abilities at the bottom that aren't reminiscent of anyone right now. Like, what is that hammer icon doing up there at the top? But back to the gameplay. Zoom in at the top, you can also see various agents and sort of their style. Like the robot looked kind of reminiscent of Zenyatta from Overwatch. We can see Omen, the original Omen. We can see a girl with red hair, as well as Cypher looking like a straight up detective. But then there's just the gun they're using. Straight up carbine with a completely different model. Of course, very early on, the maps are on texture. They're just getting the basic layout of the maps. You can tell that it's very reminiscent of what Counter-Strike is, even in the way the icons are. And I mean, it doesn't say like you're carrying the spike. They just labeled it bomb. They didn't really try at this point. They didn't build it to have Valorant's identity quite yet, which is of course obviously to be expected. I always like to mention the flying random chicken just because I still wonder what that thing was doing there. I wonder if it was an ability of some sort or if the developers were just having fun. Who is that? Who is that icon when the plant goes down? Who is that? Like, also, move it forward. Who is this Jet? You know, like, why does Jet look like that? What is this spinning disc that is getting thrown down? We don't have no idea what it is. We literally have no idea what it could be. And at all points, when you look at icons at the top, you'll see canceled agents, reworked agents. You'll see icons of quite literally characters that may never come to fruition. They may never exist, or they could be reworked into future agents, because Riot does like to do that. Either way, we follow with some early development where they kind of showcase the monitors, and you can see here, it's looking a lot more like the Valorant we know today. This is when they internally had it as Project A, and things just look, I mean, that's like, you can fully see Sova. It still obviously is early development, but it is shaped already to the Valorant we know, compared to the earlier footage that looks literally nothing like, well, you know, very little like Valorant, which is kind of insane, but they made tons of progress and developed forward, and eventually we got the official beta of Project A. Now here with the official beta, you're gonna see a lot of cool also considerations, even though it's more Valorant that you know. When you get multiple kills, like the kill banner at the bottom is different, the way it shows headshots different, but the biggest thing is the textures and lighting were remarkably different. It was looking like Valorant was gonna be leaning into quite a good graphically, I don't wanna say intense game, but you know, more shadows, right? More lighting and luminance coming from the objects, and the overall art style direction definitely still did take a turn. It is different than what we have today. If you see Sage's wall going up, for example, as she pushes mid, there's more of an effect as it's climbing up, as it's being built, but they removed that. Even the revive has more particle effects, but they removed and reduced that to, of course, make Valorant as accessible as possible. Even Jet Smoke. Jet Smoke is clearly a lot more dense and less simple than it is today. You can completely see it. It's super obvious. Hopefully we can get a side by side here. Now, with that being said, you can see it in the barrier, you can see it everywhere, you can see details that no longer exist. I do believe partially it is to do with allowing Valorant to stay as accessible as possible. But as we entered the beta and people started playing, I believe the direction came from simplifying the visuals, making it easier to read. For all its chaos, Valorant is still quite easy to read compared to other games, because in the end, Valorant was and still is trying to just be #1 best competitive shooter first. Just competitive. Since I'm more of a casual gamer, I wouldn't mind the higher visual fidelity, but that's just my opinion. Now, before we exit beta and get into Valorant's full release, I should mention that the original agents in Valorant were as followed: Brimstone, Viper, Omen, Cypher, Sova, Sage, Phoenix, Jet, Breach, and then within the beta, Raze was added. And it was funny because Raze was added after they claimed that abilities won't kill, and she had 2 nades right off of the bat and was killing everyone in her sight. Now you understand what built Valorant, from the early developments to becoming Project A to its full release with Episode 1. Ignition starting June 2nd, 2020. We get a Arena release. They also release Ascent into the game, as well as Spike Rush, followed by the first ever Battle Pass. Clearly an extremely packed patch to start Act 1, but I mean, what can we expect? However, Riot didn't slow down when it came to 2020. They just hit the ground running and they had to keep going. So for Act 2, on August 4th, 2020, we have Killjoy's release as well as Deathmatch's release. Valorant was just going ham with giving us as much content as possible that wasn't just skins, which makes a lot of sense. They have to in order to keep people playing and hooked. Also, we saw some of the more wild changes in early stage Valorant. For example, the operator used to be only 4,500 credits, then got increased to 5,000 credits, eventually coming down to 4,700 that we have today, at least at the time of recording. On top of which, we used to have an economy limit of 11,000, so you'd cap out at 11,000, meaning snowballing was literally through the roof. Eventually, they lowered it to 9,000, and running and gunning was more prominent in Valorant's early stages. Over time, Valorant lowered running and gunning accuracy, and the reason I'm putting that up front is because if I mentioned every gun in every patch where Valorant adjusted accuracy, we'd be here all day. Literally early on, you could run and gun a lot more accurate, and then year over year, they reduced jumping accuracy, rope accuracy, running accuracy, etc. to the Valorant that we know today. It's kind of insane how much they adjusted. And guess what? They still didn't stop, because in Act 3, which started on October 13th, 2020, we got Icebox's release as well as Sky a few weeks later. And as we all got cozy during the holiday seasons, on December 8th, 2020, they even gave us Snowball Fight as well as the first ever night market for us to get discounts during the holiday. Now, just to recap, we got 3 new agents, 2 new maps, as well as 2 permanent game modes and a holiday themed game mode to keep the entire community cozy and connected. And oh boy, will the contrast really show itself when it comes to the evolution of this game as time goes on. But we're still in the quote-unquote good old days, so let's keep that up with Episode 2, Formation. Act 1 releasing on January 12th, 2021. And to start off the new year, they gave me my personal main. Yoru was released into the game. It was a little bit underwhelming, and it is the old Yoru who used to throw footsteps instead of a clone, which is a little bit of a yikes, but we'll get to that again a little bit later. Even better yet, after getting Yoru on February 12th, February 17th, we got Escalation, yet another special game mode to keep the community hyped and having fun, not only in the competitive side of Valorant. Then Act 2, right around the corner on March 2nd, brought Astra, another release, and let's be honest, a very unique agent. She started off extremely powerful, and when Astra was released back in March, she had a gazillion stars and was just making everyone rip their hair out. Speaking of ripping your hair out, Act 3, starting on April 27th, 2021, showed us Breeze's release, and it was the OG Breeze, which was just a shock to the community because it really showed how far Riot would go when it came to just trying things out with maps. Based off the current map pool back then, Breeze was such a substantial jump in map size and openness that it literally threw everyone for a spin. There's something you have to keep in mind. Not only was Breeze such a substantial jump in footprint and size, but it was such a big jump in openness. The long-range gunfight and how open a map could be. Back then, the thing is, before Valorant's reworks to a lot of maps, like Valorant ends up reworking most of the maps they released, Valorant was a lot more closed and hallway-sided. There was more ratty corners, there was a lot of hard turns. Over time, Valorant updated their maps to make it more curvature and opened up by literally making hallways wider, but we didn't have that quite yet, meaning Breeze's openness brought quite a lot of fresh air when it came to Valorant's gameplay. But luckily, Valorant, as competitive as it was keeping things lighthearted, because on May 11th, we then got Replication, another fun game mode that we all hopped in and played together. It is kind of insane that we got Escalation, Valorant's gun game, and then Replication just an act later, which had us all lock in and play 5 of the same agents on both sides, making for some good chaotic fun. Stuff that are only achievable now with friends in a custom game used to be something people could queue with, something casual gamers could enjoy. As the good old times slip away, at least we're not done yet, because episode 3, Reflection, released on June 22nd, brought yet another agent into the game. KO was released into Valorant, and he is the most quote-unquote traditional Counter-Strike style agent, with his flashes and his abilities being quite straightforward. However, a little bit of a fun fact, throwing that knife and suppressing things was completely new. Not the ability itself, the debuff suppress was new to the game, and it's the first time we all had to play with it. I remember at the time we were all trying to experiment on which things would actually get disabled or not disabled when someone was suppressed. This carried us through most of the summer, because the next major patch came with Act 2 on September 8th, 2021, with Fracture's release. One of the most controversial maps. I think it's more hated than loved, but I have a soft spot for Fracture, and I think again it went to show that Valorant was ready to play around with its map pool. The way defenders would spawn in the middle, the ropes underneath, all changed up Valorant's gameplay, and it's just something that I can't hate, because I always want to see stuff that are new and stuff that are experimental, even if they don't get it right the first try. Eventually, as we near the end of the year, Act 3 saw Chamber's release on November 16th, 2021. Chamber was insane. He entered Valorant with not crazy abilities, just more guns. Everyone was a little bit concerned just giving a Valorant agent guns more than anything. However, it didn't take long for people to realize he had a pocket guardian, the whole TP out instantly after sniping, double trips, and a lot more that made Chamber an important part of Valorant's history. A pretty dark moment in Valorant's history, because he still holds the title as the most broken agent for the longest period of time. He was meta for over 1 year. Over 365 days. I could yap a lot about Chamber because, again, he's super important to Valorant's history. However, I made a video that, if you're interested, you can watch, Overpowered to Unplayable, The Fall of Chamber, because he literally deserved an entire video. That's how much we could dive into it here, but regardless, Chamber was released into the game. Alright, let's move on. Episode 4, Disruption, released on January 11th, 2022, brought Neon, which was an extremely fun agent. I don't think many people were complaining. Agents that bring a lot of life and fun into the game are always entertaining. I mean, Neon alone spawned insane players like Temet and others to showcase what movement really looks like in Valorant. Then in Act 2, March 1st, 2022, we got Yoru's reworks. This is actually what brought Yoru to life, because up until now, he was very, very underwhelming. We still had mains and a lot of cool, smart outplays, but Yoru's rework really brought him to the agent that he was always meant to be, and it was definitely a very important patch overall. However, that's the only major thing we got in Act 2, because then we gotta wait all the way till Act 3, April 27th, when we get Fade's release. Now, while things are slowing down, it's still too hard to complain quite yet, because basically in this 6-month period, we got 2 major changes, which were the agent releases, as well as Yoru's rework being so substantial that he was borderline a new agent. Eventually, we hit Episode 5, Dimension, with Act 1, and this is actually a huge change to Valorant. This is actually when they added Pearl, but also added map rotations into the competitive queue. Meaning, yes, we did get an entirely new map, a map I personally do like, even though some people hate it. We also got map rotations, and this changed Valorant forever. Maps were now rotated in and out of competitive queue, meaning stuff like Fracture being gone for 1 year legit happened in the future. This is the moment that changed all that. Moving from there, Act 2 was very, very quiet for Valorant, and we didn't see anything until October 18th. So from June 22nd with the Pearl release to October 18th, things were very, very quiet. But on October 18th, 2022, we got Harbor's release. Poor Harbor, still not a viable agent, and released to Valorant actually very, very weak. Literally from the start till now, over 2 years, Harbor has always been underpowered and continues to be. It's kind of funny because I see when he was released and I'm like, wow, it's been a while, yet I still don't see him very often. On December 6th, 2022 to end 2022, we got Swiftplay entering beta. This one always confuses me because sometimes in my head I feel like we've always had Swiftplay, but we legit didn't. If you didn't want to play ranked but wanted anything like Valorant, you had to play unrated, meaning you had to play 40 to 50 minutes to get the Valorant experience, but Swiftplay eventually fixed it, making a proper short version of the game. Then we hop over to 2023 with Episode 6, Revelation. January 10th, 2023, we get Lotus introduced to the map, and the map rotations now update. It's the first time we see the map rotations cycle in and out. From January 10th all the way to March 7th, things are a little bit quiet, but still luckily in Act 2, we get a brand new agent, which is Gecko. An agent I truly do enjoy, and this guy's release was hype. He brought a lot of new and unique mechanics to the game, and till now he's still a very creative agent that I feel holds his own just from a gameplay enjoyment perspective, but he also holds his own as being a very strong yet balanced agent, so this is a release that I remember very fondly. However, unfortunately, from March 7th all the way to June 6th, the rest of episode 6 is quite empty. We see a map rotation, agent changes, and of course weapon balances like we do every patch, but nothing super substantial comes to fruition. It is important to note though, in episode 7, we did get the Kingdom credits, a complete rework to how you can purchase things in the game. Now you could grind the new agent, buy them outright, or eventually just buy them through Kingdom credits, which I actually think was a good change. You also now had the option to buy buddies and battle pass rewards for free by just playing the game. I still think it's underutilized and Kingdom credits need an upgrade. They need some love. I think they're a little bit bare bones, but I still don't hate this change that came to Valorant. Kingdom credits aren't bad inherently. But outside of this, the first half of the year was still pretty bare bones. Not until episode 7, Evolution, on June 27th. However, we have to keep that in mind. From March 7th till June 27th, things were a little bit quiet here. We get Deadlock, a new agent that is a ton of controversy. Man, did I hate on her like crazy. Now she's considered a decent agent, but changes are just around the corner as the time of recording this. Deadlock still is an agent that I remember fondly because, same idea, I still think Riot was cooking in creativity. A wall that you could shoot through but couldn't walk through, you know, a trip that only activates with sound, and an ult that literally grabs you as a cocoon. Like these things, like I still really enjoyed where Valorant was going when it came to new agents and their creativity. I still truly respect it and I enjoy it. On June 27th, they also released Team Deathmatch, which is again one of those ones you're like, whoa, it took till 2023, halfway through 2023 to release a team deathmatch for Valorant. And this is the biggest thing. If you understand how the game started with game modes and trying things and where we ended up, it is crazy how long Valorant takes on gaps to add new game modes. And now that we have these solidified team deathmatch, swift play, ranked and unranked game modes, Valorant sort of just stopped with custom modes and new game modes. So kind of falls off a cliff, but either way, team deathmatch was added on June 27th, 2023. Furthermore, on July 11th, so less than 1 month later, Valorant announces Premiere and Premiere Beta begins to happen. Premiere is still something that is kind of cool and people were really hyped, but it didn't get much love by the devs and it also fell off a cliff. A lot of people don't care or play Premiere, even though it was super hype and a super cool way to make your own team and have fun. With the lack of rewards and the lack of love and updates from Riot's side, you know, it's one of those things that kind of fell off a cliff, but that's just my opinion. Furthermore, we still were at least on a roll. June, July, and then August 29th, with the start of Act 2, we got Sunset. So Valorant was sort of smacking things out in the second half of 2023, and of course, we will always appreciate that. After Sunset's release on August 29th, we take a little bit of a break, but right around the corner, October 31st, to end 2023 off with a bang, we get ISO's release. ISO's release is something, same idea here, I think was really enjoyable. Everyone was like, what the heck is happening when you ult someone and bring them an entire new dimension? You know, the whole thing where you have to shoot the balls to make sure you get shields. I still think Valorant was cooking when it came to its agents and their uniqueness. On top of that, even though I said it, they ended the year with a bang on October 31st, they really didn't, because December 5th, they still gave us a little bit of a bonus. Drift releases into Valorant, which is a team deathmatch map. This is really good because they took a long time to add team deathmatch, so the fact they immediately followed it up with a map within the same half of the year is something I did appreciate, and it's my favorite team deathmatch map. I absolutely love Drift. I think it's an enjoyable map. A lot of ways to be a little bit of a sneaky rat. Then we head to 2024 with episode 8, Defiance. Now, this was crazy because on January 9th, 2024, Valorant added the Outlaw. And this was big news because it's the first time that Valorant told us or showed us that they're willing to change a core fundamental of the game, that if you hit your buy menu, it won't always look the same. And the Outlaw was released into the game as a mid-tier sniper. Now, the Outlaw is pretty niche. It has its spot, but it's not overly used. I don't hate nor love the Outlaw, but I do love the concept that we can get new weapons and we can change the fundamentals of a game, because by doing so, you can really shake up the meta and enjoy something new. You can make something feel new. And I was so happy that we got the Outlaw. From January 9th till March 26th, things were quiet. But it's hard to complain when in Act 2, we got Clove. Clove, again, an agent that I really enjoy. An agent that's a little bit too overpowered, staying in S tier forever, but still an agent that I enjoy. A smoker who is able to play aggressive. A smoker who can double up as not exactly a duelist, but someone who can frag out. Riot showed us that they know a lot of people don't want to play smokes because it can be boring, so they gave us a solution, Clove. And I think, again, it's a very good approach when it comes to updating and adding content to your game. In Act 3 on June 11th, to end the first half of 2024, we get Abyss. Abyss is a very unique map. First map you can actually fall off of the map, and it led to a ton of hilarious moments. And while also controversial, because for some reason basically every map has to be at least a little bit controversial, it was a very large map with a lot of unique mechanics, and I loved it because I'm someone who prioritizes shaking up the game so that it's fun, and this map was just fun. Outside of competitive, outside of everything, it was just a fun map. Anyways, Valorant sort of stayed on a roll in my eyes, because as we hit the second half of 2024 with Episode 9 Collision and the summer kicks us off, we get within Act 1 the Valorant console beta. And I honestly think this was such a cool way for Valorant to debut on console, in the sense that I actually think they made it quite polished, they made it quite enjoyable, and while sadly we don't have the exact numbers, I still like to believe there are quite a few Valorant console players. I don't think it'll ever be as popular as PC, however, it is so one-to-one and get the exact same patches that we do that the communities are now intertwined. Someone on Valorant console could click this video and enjoy. And if you're a Valorant console player, let me know down below. I want to heart at least one of you guys, because I seriously think it's super cool to expand the community, and I will never be upset when we expand platforms like what Valorant did with console release. Anyways, with Act 2 on August 27th, we get Vice's release. And to me, this might be an unpopular opinion. To me, from here on out, agent releases sort of went downhill. I think Vice came out very underpowered. I think Vice is still not very strong, and I don't think Vice is particularly fun or unique to play. I don't think her abilities inherently, like, I understand visually they might be fine, but I think inherently they don't have the same appeal as something like Gecko. They don't have that same heft as Astra, stuff that really makes something unique and enjoyable to the game. So I don't know. I didn't love Vice's release. To me, it was very, very meh, and I still think most people sort of kind of glossed over it. And I'm not gonna lie, I've been creating for a long time. I sort of have the numbers to prove it. Vice's release wasn't very hype. Like, it started hype based off leaks and then it fell off. That goes to show that people weren't that excited once they knew what Vice was about. Following this, the next major update was on October 22nd, 2024. In Act 3, we got Glitch, a new map for Team Deathmatch. This is also one of my favorite maps in Team Deathmatch. The two maps they released after are both my favorite. I'll never complain. I think they should continue to expand the Team Deathmatch pool because it's good fun. It's a good thing for casual. It's one of the only things casuals have. So continuing to update it is one of the few things I think Riot should keep doing for casuals if they don't expand on doing more. The remainder of 2024 still did see some substantial changes though. Outside of like a lot of complaints that I'm going to get to in a second, some cool things happened. So I mentioned the Outlaw earlier. They added the regen shield in the second half of 2024, which again, you press the buy menu, something new comes out. It's a new shield between the two with its own unique niche situation and very fun gameplay mechanics. I enjoy the regen shield. I think it's really cool. While I don't think it's used too much, when it is used and it's used mindfully, it's a lot of fun. Another big thing is we had one of the biggest Valorant patches that we've ever gotten that just sort of shifted up the whole game. And they keep doing this once in a while. If you recall the history when it comes to Valorant, once in a while they drop this huge patch that shakes things up and makes new agents strong and old agents who are weak strong. They don't always nail it. There's some agents for some reason like Harbor that just haven't been able to break through. But for the most part, these big things are great. When it comes to the competitive side of Valorant with map rotations and adding new maps, adding new agents, changing up the balance,
adding stuff like Outlaw or Regen Shield, if they keep these things up, the competitive side of Valorant will remain quite enjoyable. However, let's go on to 2025 and then end with a little bit of a talk. So in 2025, as of right now, Act 1, they changed it up. So now it's not called Episode 10. Instead, we got Season 2025. A nice little step away from the lore, I guess. And again, more just about being competitive and straight to the point. I don't know, Episode 9 Collision, you know, kind of sounds cooler. But okay, Season 2025, we're up to date now. January 7th, we have Taeho's release. Now, it takes a lot of time to edit these videos, so at the time, Taeho was the final release of the video, but we know that since Taeho's release, we then got Waylay. Waylay is a pretty interesting character. Taeho, I felt, was a good character in the sense that he was a unique character visually, and he fits the roster well, but his abilities, in my opinion, fell a little bit flat in being unique. On the flip side, Waylay does have some non-unique abilities, but stuff like slowing down Hindrance being an entire new status effect is unique, but she falls a little bit flat in her character design. I don't feel she's very memorable or fits the Valorant roster, and I don't even like the name very much. Luckily, I wasn't the only one who thought that opinion. I've heard comments like Concord AF moment, where it's just a character that doesn't feel like they have much character in them. But either way, we had Taeho, then Waylay. Now we're going to backtrack a bit so we can continue the video. Furthermore, we got the flexes released. I have an entire video about the flexes, just complaining. Riot's greed is out of control. We also got the EXO bundle in 2025. The reason I didn't touch on skin lines, I mentioned it before, they just inflated over time, and I don't know if they're very interesting. There's a lot of key bundles that released and people were hyped. Like I could have mentioned Kuronami, and when it was released, they are a part of the history of Valorant and moments for the community, but they're sort of just sad at this point, because when I look back, all I see is prices continue to rise and Valorant not wanting to do anything about it. I see some quality degrading. We have the flexes. I thought the flexes would be used to give more to the community, especially casual players or events that we can grind, but instead the flex has been used. We have proof now with the Helix bundle used to just inflate skin prices. So outside of cosmetics, the history of Valorant does go deep. The history of Valorant does have a lot of content, and it's definitely not the worst game out there. It has a ton of updates, and overall they've done really good. When it comes to the pros, like I said, they keep shaking things up for anyone who plays competitively and is really focused on the core fundamentals of Valorant, and especially if you like pro play, Riot puts a lot of money when it comes to pro play. With that being said, the lack of game modes that sort of fell off a cliff as you watch this video, you could tell I went from a lot of cool stuff to just, oh yay, we got a short version of the game, oh yay, we got a team deathmatch, and then nothing. Casual game modes and enjoyment for the normal player has plummeted, and it's clear where Valorant is fully focused. If you're into chess and you absolutely want to be the best at chess, and you only want to play chess, you only want that traditional game, it works out because Valorant is somewhat in that vein of things. But for, of course, an online game, they still have to change some amount of stuff, but they're clearly focused on their one core fundamental instead of expanding to the casual player. They want to focus on that niche, and I guess to some extent, maybe that's okay. But in the end, it's going to depend on the type of player you are. And when I look back at the history of Valorant, I preferred the earlier days versus the later days, at least when it came to direction and the way Riot released stuff. Even with the competitive side, we don't have stuff like a replay system. Maybe by the time you're watching this, if it's later in the year, you've seen a replay system. We still don't have gifting, and there's a lot of other features that are still missing. Though where credit is due, I also didn't absolutely hit everything in the history of Valorant, or unless you wanted a 2-hour feature film, that's basically impossible. But overall, let me know what you think down below when it comes to the future of Valorant as well as its past, and thanks for watching.